you doing?
Hello, everybody. How's it going?
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Well, everybody, I'm Dana. If you don't know
Dana.
LaPonda, she's lurking, but she's feeling under the weather. So I'm going to do my best to moderate this awesome August Cypher.
Awesome.
So,
Thanks.
welcome. It's a pleasure to have you guys, and hopefully I do just as good of a job, but I know and so it's 6:58, so we'll give it a few more minutes and then we'll get started. Okay?
Cool.
How does that work for everybody?
Sounds great.
Thank you. And so how's everybody been enjoying this heat wave? Saturday, my daughter was like, I feel like I'm in Florida. We're in DC, so.
It's bad here in Louisville, but it's always bad in the summer.
Yeah.
Is that Louisville as in Kentucky?
Yeah,
Wow. Home of Wendell Berry.
that's right. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Louisville's a complicated place, you know.
So I hear.
Yeah.
Well, all places are though, right? In one way or another.
Yeah, that's right.
How's it going, Hayes?
Oh, well. Thanks for asking, Naomi. Just got
Good
back.
to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too. You were asking about heat earlier. We just got back from Florida at an artist retreat. We didn't step foot off the retreat grounds. We were just in the place the whole time, and it was right on the beach, so it was nice to balance the heat, with some surf.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. How many days was the retreat?
We got 6 days. So we got there on really 5. We got there on trying to think. We got there on a Tuesday and checked out on Sunday. So it was like 5 days. It was brief, but it was just what we needed. It was great.
No, that sounds great.
Yeah.
So what was the agenda for the retreat? Was it just to have time to write, or?
Yeah, that was it. It's an arts retreat called the Hermitage. It's down on Minnesota Key on the west coast of Florida. And so it's just the time is entirely yours. If you stay longer, they ask you to do like a reading. But ours was so short that they just kind of let us have time to write. It was perfect.
Oh, that sounds great. And then being at the beach. Oh, that sounds like heaven.
Yeah. I'm reading all beach poems tonight.
Nice.
Okay, well, let's get started. For those of you reading this evening, LaPonda did send out the schedule. And so let us get started. And first up is Cardyn Brooks.
All right. Good evening. Thank you to LP. Thank you to Dana for filling in. And it's my great pleasure to be with you all tonight.
Sorry.
You put yourself on mute. You were muted.
Oh, it said the host muted me, so I
Yeah, that was an accident. I'm sorry.
Well, I just wanted to make sure. So then I was pausing to make sure you didn't want to say something else.
Yeah. No, go right ahead. Thank you.
No, you're welcome. I'm Cardyn Brooks, Outreach Coordinator for the Right Women Book Fest and author of sexy fun fiction about grown-ups in love. CX Brooks is my edgier writing persona, and there's no punctuation with the X, just to honor my enslaved ancestors. When She's on Top is a collection of 4 short stories related to the Lux Links Club. And here we go. Perception, reputation. Powerful women are still held to a higher standard when it comes to sexual escapades, making it risky business for them to be unlucky in love. That's where the Hirsch sisters improve the odds with their companion compatibility service, introducing philanthropic heiresses and female executives to honorable, educated, hardworking men and people willing to act as sophisticated arm candy to supplement their wages, becomes a shared passion project for the three sisters because their wealthy mother killed herself after being scammed by their father. So they created the LuxLink Club. No fortune hunters, no gold diggers. LuxLink's Club story number 1. This mark changes the game. 20 years ago. Send in my next visitor, please, Nancy. Estate planner and family trust attorney Jaime Lowenthal straightened his silk tie after using the intercom on his fancy new office phone system. Glancing around at the freshly painted space, conservatively decorated and minimally furnished with a few cast-off collectible antiques from his grandparents, made him glad he had opened his own practice instead of joining his papa's firm. The closed door that separated his office from the short hallway to the small reception area glided open silently. "Here we are, Miss Hirsch and Mrs. Brown," his secretary said as she guided a young girl wearing a plaid school uniform and an older woman in a denim shirt and overalls into his office. Nancy introduced the child as his prospective client, Miss Margot Carr Hirsch of the New England department stores Hirsch's, and her chaperone as Mrs. Janet Brown. Nancy waited for them to be seated before she backed out of the office and closed the door softly. "How may I be of service to you, Miss Hirsch?" Solemn brown eyes, framed by thick lashes much darker than the cap of toasted brown curls atop her head, stared directly into his eyes for several slow blinks. She nodded once, then reached into her Wonder Woman backpack and pulled out a silver piggy bank, which she balanced in her lap. "Daddy stole all of Mommy's money and divorced her to run off and marry a gold-digging tramp. Then Mommy killed herself because she was so sad. Now we're going to live with Daddy all the time." She paused until her lower lip stopped quivering. "Mr. Lowenthal, I need to hire you to protect my trust fund and the trust funds for my little sister, Juliana, and our baby sister, Chloe." Present day. The padded envelope was small, 3 inches by 5, according to the pre-printed details on the back, just below the pull tab. She flipped the package again and again read Alexa Davis Spencer in uniform block type above her residential address, rendered in the same bold font as on the shipping label. The return address was an unfamiliar post office box. The postmark was local. She frowned as she tested the weight of the parcel on the palm of her hand. She hadn't ordered anything, and even so, she always shipped her deliveries to her workplace to guarantee someone was available to sign for them. She pulled the tab. Inside, an unassuming black thumb drive with a "Play Me" sticky note tempted her curiosity beyond her willingness to resist. Repeated warnings from her company's mandatory quarterly seminars about security protocols and personal safety measures cycled through her brain while Alexa headed toward her home office at the back of her secluded residence in an exclusive suburban gated community. She located her tablet, which she used primarily as an e-reader. If the drive was infected with a virus that her high-end computer security software couldn't handle, she wouldn't lose anything that couldn't be recovered. She curled into the window seat as the video file automatically opened. A sunny scene filled with the clear blue skies and citrus trees tapped into her memories of her recent long weekend getaway at the seaside enclave in Florida with her secret boyfriend, artist Beckford Gallegos. When the focus swung to an ornately scrolled iron fence with the letters S and E worked into the design, Alexa's breath hitched with a sudden spike of anxiety. The image faded to black, then dissolved into the setting of an exquisitely appointed bedroom suite. The king-size bed held her attention not only because it dominated the space, but because it was occupied by a woman and a man, by Alexa and Beck. That moment of recognition split her consciousness into 2 levels of awareness: horrified shock and anger and fear at the irrefutable evidence of the violation of her personal privacy, of Beck's personal privacy. rolled through her in nauseating waves. At the same time, she recognized how sensual and loving the two bodies locked together looked in the moving image. The absence of sound made their embrace appear even more explicit. Alexa had never recorded herself having sex or permitted anyone else to record her. She had never understood the appeal of doing so until this moment. From the wavy fall of her disheveled hair atop her tipped back head to the rise and fall of her full lips and open mouth, down her rounded chin to the long curve of her exposed neck, drawing the eye to her breasts, prominently displayed to heaving advantage, encased in a pale yellow confection of lace and satin, the undulations of her body broadcast the joys of carnal abandon. Stretched along the upward curve of her deeply arched back, her softly padded ribs and her stomach contracted and expanded, up and down, in and out with Beck's driving thrust, unimpeded by the crotchless panel of the lace and satin matching bottoms between her bent and spread legs. And next, Damien Tillman.
Thank you so much. Please drop your, don't forget to drop your IG links, your Facebook, your Twitter, TikTok, LinkedIn, so we know what, you know, how to follow and support. So up next, Damien Tillman.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for just being here, listening, supporting. I'm a writer, I'm an educator, a social entrepreneur. I do other things, but I'm also a co-host of this hip hop talk show called The Framework. And I'm going to be reading probably about 3 poems from my book called Learning to Quote Myself. You could find it on my website, damientillman.com, and I will not take up too much more of your time. I'll get into the reading. Drafts. Dear concrete, you were poured over the soil like syrup. To some, you were quicksand. To me, a trampoline. I never thought I could get so much air between us until I bounced. Now, you're more cobblestone than anything, hated for your bumpiness. Most take the short, shiny path, not knowing poverty paved it. You strengthen my legs for long walks. That's reflection. The poverty line is a limbo stick. We get low, but nobody limbos where I'm from. Poor parents do difficult dances. I call it the broke ballet. My mother mastered penny pirouettes. The routines damaged her feet, but her performances were brilliant. We'd cringe every time we heard a creak when she bent. I learned that the pressure of being someone else's world will burst you. She wants the best for everyone. Her well wishes taught me that no one knows what best means. Can best exist alongside pain. That's empathy. Poor people are herded into neighborhoods I call low opportunity environments. There are invisible fences called blocks so we don't stray too far. There's an illusion of choice. Red and yellow traffic lights, every other intersection. Blue, white, and red tops of cracked files decorate playgrounds. Freedom is an empty ideal when the word has never been said or written for you. Bricks are yellow from piss stains and the road don't lead to any wizards. Oz is a measurement. School is a magnifying glass focusing light on the ants of our mistakes. Brunches are catered in cafeterias over the summer. Failing's the easiest way to make reservations. The more you mess up, the brighter the spotlight. The projects are plantations for prisons. We're rotated like crops. That's synergy. Shootouts have their own metronomes. They set red rum-like rhythms to our blues. Clock ticks replaced by bullets. Buckets and sticks bang beats by the Brooklyn beach. We heard guns, then roses bled the street. Strays are more accurate than the shooters. White chalk lines curate body art mausoleums. They feature murals that tag bystanders camouflaged in blood stains engraved on the walls of our eyes. We learn to read between the dies. That's literacy. Rumbling stomach scored the soundtrack of dinner time. Sometimes breakfast cereal was the music that soothed me. The roach I swallowed crawled around while I digested. It was a nauseating night. Tiptoeing made my belly dance. The exotic experience added a gourmet feel to frosted flakes. Pain is like any other dessert. Would you like a taste? They say sharing sweets improves the taste. I say, every lesson ain't worth the experience. That's just nasty. Sufferers don't move in silence, but we're appreciated when we're quiet. Silence is golden to those that prefer you voiceless. Trauma-kissed lips tighten, forming dams, stopping the flow of words needed to empower every SOS. They suppress our sounds, but that's just society. We experience safety like soldiers, almost dying every day. Sincerely, the boy who liked to bounce on his bed. Thank you. I think that's my longest poem, so I don't want to waste all your time. The next one is called Couch Sessions. Schizophrenia is characterized by abnormal social behavior and a failure to understand reality. Hearing voices, false beliefs, unclear thinking, and lack of motivation are common indicators, but definitions don't ask if you want to be defined. Do you know how lonely it is to think differently? We're all miscategorized, I guess. I argue with myself. We debate whether I'm a martyr, dying to make a difference, or being ignored because different is defined by discomfort. We're not on speaking terms right now. We learned that a conversation is more than one person talking. I remind myself that they can't be me, especially us. Correcting grammatical errors with pronouns can be empowering, but you can't be fixed. You've never been broken at any point in your life. Thank you. The last poem I'm going to read is a lesson on creative play. Thinking is a creative sport. What if Mario could search any of the worlds before Princess Toadstool? Oh, what if Mario could search any of the 8 worlds for Princess Toadstool, but after searching 4 worlds, King Koopa threw her into the lava? The suspense would kill one of them. Real challenges remove the guarantee of success. I like reimagining rules and adding choice. The Thundercats fled their dying planet and crash landed on 3rd Earth. They built a base and searched for rare resources to fuel their vehicles, power their technology, and more. They offered the native people protection in exchange for mining said resources. They offered protection, not training, education, or the technology itself so they could defend themselves. But I digress. Mumra, the oldest native, was immortal and lived in a pyramid. His body was wrapped in linen bandages like preserved North Africans. Mumra saw the Thundercats as a threat and decided to attack their leader, Lion-O. He lost. He was called the embodiment of evil. He couldn't sue for libel. What's a better spoil of war than history? Winners write themselves as righteous, and as soon as they do, they become liars. You ever want to call timeouts like Zach Morris? Imagine being able to stop time, discuss your options with a studio audience, and make informed decisions. How stupid does Zach Morris have to be to get caught every episode? If you've ever smelled a New York sewer, you know that the Ninja Turtles couldn't sneak up on anyone. Imagine the NBA with hockey's power plays. Would the Knicks still suck? Optimus Prime dying on that operating table in Transformers the Animated Movie felt like a World Series Game 7 full count grand slam with me pitching. That was worse than watching Bambi for the first time in 2nd grade. Why would anyone make a movie for kids where the premise is a mother getting killed for no reason? Tears welled up when she didn't come back at the end of the movie, but even 6-year-old Black males aren't allowed to cry. I digress. The Transformers missed more shots than Elmer Fudd on Saturday morning. They could fly, produce holograms, and travel through space. How hard is it to hit a robot the size of a building? Cartoons cultivated my naivete. Then reality drowned me like broken levees. They were all Decepticons. Adults did more damage to my childhood than any other missed understanding. I was told to grow up by morally righteous hypocrites that promote lies to further their oppressive agendas and call it adulthood. I question how they measure maturity. Thank you.
Thank you, Damien. That was amazing. Thank you. Again, don't forget to drop your info so we can all support. So next up, we have Naomi Ayala. I hope I pronounced it right. Please correct me
Perfect.
if I did not.
Thank you. I have some recent work. Hi again, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight. If you're joining in, I have 3 poems. The first one is very short. Men, he says, we're guilty of everything. How to paint the rain, speak, sing the rain, how to rain walk when it's not raining, to keep rain skin all night long and go to work smelling like rain, doing your rain love thing when the boys don't see you coming, don't know the rain in you. You will never be an executive. You love the rain too much. You will never be not here. Let it pound, sweep, gutter run, turn grown men into shivering rivers and keep the children awake. Let it smooth out this and that of the world of the invisible. Let it keep.
Naomi, I think you inadvertently muted yourself.
Mhm.
There you go.
Sorry. Stay-at-home order, April 2020. Not even a trail of crumbs for crow in the numbing streets of the shut city. But things are done and things are being made. Your piece of what you got is real. What could have been great. And when you have an extra that's not enough, count your rows. Pray, pray, crow. Everyone who can is imbibing. So send your prayers and offer up something. Who feeds the raven? God asked Job. It was a bad rhetorical question. Who feeds the 2 world walkers? We are here. We don't know anything. Thank you.
Thank you, Naomi. Next, we will have Ms. Melanie Henderson.
Good evening, everyone. Beautiful work so far, and looking forward to more. I'm going to read newer poems that I haven't shared with anyone thus far, so I'm excited tonight. This first poem is called Sweeping Berry Farms. It's about a place that doesn't exist anymore. From the shady ginkgos of Northwest, desegregated ball courts, Dunbar's historic arc of promise, the nation's first Black everything. America's dark Catholics come down from the balcony of second-class mass, rejecting racism's poison preached into their arteries, erecting a church along 2 major veins, New Jersey and New York avenues, still standing. We make room. I was 8 when my mom stretched. An odd mix of city and woodland, Berry Farm held, sometimes gripped us, by a concrete pathway with green grass on both sides. 1234 Stevens Road Southeast. A clean beige stucco exterior hugged a door, emitting the orange of a Santa Fe sunset. We make room. Thin walls kept us in constant conversation with our neighbors. It was the farms that gave me my first whiff of chitlins. I lost my stomach in the alley that day. We make room. I broke my glasses once, ran up the blurry hill further than my mom allowed. My nearsightedness forced me to step closer to see the men in blue slacks sitting on 5-gallon buckets, eating clams with hot sauce and beer. We make room. From private school to public, Burney Elementary slouched on the corner of MLK. My Northwest girls did not fail me. I could cheer, hand clap, and roll eyes with the best of them. The blacktop, a wide asphalt platform, collected our songs, our rainbow-colored barrettes, and the blood of some of us young folks. We make room. My mom taught me and my brother how to stretch too. The biggest dealer in the farm snatched my brother's bike after school. 2-job fatigue didn't stop her from walking Wade, Sumner, Eaton, Stevens, First Sterling, until she spotted her bike and snatched it from Big K's hands in front of all his boys. She stretched peppers, potatoes, and carrots in the community garden too. We make room. Back to Northwest via the V-bus. Private school resumed, as does the rest of our lives. Decades later, I sit in summer camp on Sumner with my boy child, watching him create his own memories, selfishly wanting him to connect with mine, wanting him to know that even thrown away places stay with us. And this next poem, also new, is called In Full Triumph of Faith, in honor of my great-great-grandmother. South of the Capitol to Old Providence Hospital in Southeast, my great-great-grandmother Mary carried her dying husband from their home. It's impossible to know which thorn was sharpest, the haunt of vows uttered 39 years before, till death do us part, the June sun pressing down wet and inexorable as the pressure on her husband's brain, or her lonely walk home. Over the years, my elders described my great-great-grandmother as a large, strong, capable mother of 13, a devoted wife. Yet, it is her deed on my great-great-grandfather's last day that pauses me. Great-great-grandmother, of whom there is no image, but those of your descendants. Who was your witness? Who wrote of you? 100 years later, I, descendant of those who crafted this diamond city from muddy water, descendant of the generation of alley dwellers, I carry love like Mary, sometimes like joy or trouble or dead weight. My aunt told me, when you pray, pray to the Mother Mary. Sound advice, whether for the present or of other centuries. I know she referred to the Madonna, dark hair wrapped in white, body wrapped in sky blue, Virgin Mother of Jesus. I know this clearly and do pray to the Madonna when the house is dark and my kids are asleep. Yet my sorrow reaches for Mary, born enslaved in Westmoreland County, Virginia, who walked here to DC, first of the freed, Mary, mother of my mothers, Mary, wife of Thomas, Mary, who made clear in the text of an obituary that her beloved died in full triumph of faith. Mary, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. This next poem is, I guess, a pandemic tribute. When we hugged in June, you lay your head in the pocket of my neck, our embrace long and tight as the helices that link us. I felt you go limp in my arms, as if you hadn't exhaled in the 15 months we were locked inside. You, a black-eyed Susan, holding, thriving as the beloveds of your gardens wilted. brichyberas, African violets, purple orchids meshing with the soil. I held your strong petals in the dark softness of my torso. A brief shower trickling from the oak's branches, cooling the burden of seasons. Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie, so much for gracing us with those new works. They are amazing. Next, we have Hayes Davis.
Thank you. I'm going to follow Melanie by reading also brand new work. Just wrote this at a retreat I just came back from. First one is called Burn the Blindfold. There's a reference to Laura in the poem. Petrarch, who wrote sonnets, got a sonnet form named after him, had a muse named Laura. It's not clear who exactly she was, but she shows up over and over again in his poems. Burn the Blindfold. Call me Libra as I hold the gut pull of last week's amusement park family selfies and today's seaside nirvana sans children in equal esteem. Diplomat till I die, I claim this grip on two truths with distant emotional zip codes. Give me the chest swell of pride, citizen inspired by love poems describing the lips or arms of a Laura who's not, damn him, the national poet's wife. I root for lion and wildebeest, quieted rumble of hunger or escapes flutter of adrenaline, trips from college to my parents' separate homes, meals planned or cobbled, budgets followed or flown on pants seats, helped deflate my 4-year-old self's resentment. My 12-year-old can glare all she wants when I compliment the British BMX rider who nailed the front flip and the 360 handlebar twist to beat the American, because I can root for and against this freedom, this land of beach, canyon, and deep forest, repopulated by displacement, raised by greed, watered with blood. Give me all the contradictions as I live them myself, German and Black, man and gentle. This next one is called Indefatigable. And there's a reference in here, something called red tide, which is this phenomenon that happens in the ocean where where algae sucks all the oxygen out of the water and makes some of the sea life die. And there is one bad word in here, I apologize if there's any kids around. Indefatigable. Look no further than sea turtle infants for its definition. Even on an incline that our scale would measure insurmountable, this baby is all scrabble of flippers and scrabble and scrabble and scrabble until the sand gives way. This baby is grit and no fucks to give for dead fish, carrion eels. This baby makes a way over tiny raindropped mountains, the epitome of hill and dale, these last yards of the Gulf's dead denizens who joined the turtles' tens of siblings in nature's honest slaughter. This baby will taste salt. This baby turtle will float at least a stream or 3, duck the red tide. This baby turtle will outlive us, outlive these phones recording these early steps, vicarious hope, brief respite from our own choking future, unmasked present. This doesn't have a title yet. Early August morning nestles between Lemon Bay and the Gulf. Sea oats lean over dunes, sway in ocean breezes with ocado grasses. Above thin strip of sand washed by water's gentle, dependable swell. Beyond the pelicans glide, dip, beak now full with fish. The sea stretches toward a gently curved horizon where cobalt meets baby blue. But your gaze returns over and over like the waves to the beach. You imagine Demosthenes and his mouth full of pebbles, fighting through minerals and breakers larger than those for fluency, and breakers larger than these for fluency, articulation. Or maybe it's your own son, his brown skin bronzed by summer, his grandfather's spirit swirling his feet, no pebbles in his mouth, but just as much hope that his voice will hitch less in high school. Or maybe the figure you imagine is you, so that now there are 3 brown bodies in the poem, or 2 and a memory, and you've decentered the European illusion, begun to wonder about brown stutterers on other shores, studies in contrast of waves and knotted mouths. Maybe 1 or 2 more. Minnesota Key Sunset. And there's a few, so I'm interested in color names that are not like red or yellow. So there's several of those in here. I'm not going to explain them except to say that gamboge is a shade of orange, I think. All right, Minnesota Key Sunset. Oh, and also, I'm sorry. In the poem, you'll hear synesthesia, which is when you like use one sense that doesn't actually happen in life. The magic hour shouts Tuscany yellow on sea oat stalks, entices pickle green sea grape leaves to Chartreuse's neighborhood. Gentle breakers lick pale gray shoreline. Pelicans hear fish in the tide's timed swell. If the clouds could taste their gamboge, they'd nudge each other, nod, smile, and cry. In minutes, the sky's song quiets, even as wind shimmies the anchor gray surf in a last dance. Now buttermilk backs the clouds, faded macaroon waits for last call, tries to holler at sepia sitting down the bar, just above shoreline, the palm trees, ocean air silhouettes. And I'm going to end with, I'm sitting in between 2 of my father's paintings. And as you may or may not have guessed from the poems, we scattered his ashes on the beach, or at a beach that I grew up going to. And so this is an imagined poem of an imagined photograph that won't happen because he passed away when I was in the year 2000. Ekphrasis imagined. 1. In these pictures that don't exist, the artist and the artist's son throw a frisbee. Below the usual expanse of cobalt, now baby, now speckled or streaked, nimbus cum cumulo, the sand wafts red tides, dead eels, and deader fish, once slick scales, now leathery, but flicks of wrist and leaping one-handed grabs, only hear artful bliss in the clockwork waves. Pay no mind to the surf's fecund leavings. The artist and the artist's son savor gulls' raucous caws, pelican dives, dolphins' peekaboo dorsal arches. In these pictures that don't exist, they pop a cork on the way to their studios, laughing through the late afternoon deluge that chases families hauling chairs, umbrellas, coolers. 2. In these pictures that do not exist, the artist's son does not say goodbye to the surf. Minutes before the Uber arrives, he hauls his father's suitcase from the rustic cottage down the shell path. Instead of nodding to his father's spirit in distant bits of ash and bone in another ocean. In these pictures that do not exist, it is only 5:30. They have yet to plank salmon and grill Jersey Silver Queen corn, spoon milk over blueberries, and granulated sugar for dessert. For now, the artist picks up palette and acrylics. The artist's son sets ink to page. Thank you so much again for being part of this. And thank you to all the other readers. I'm really enjoying this.
Thank you, Hayes, for sharing those words with us. It was beautiful. Next, we have Michelle E. Williams.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. It's been awesome. Thank you so much. Again, my name is Michelle Williams. I'm the author of Color Pretty. The Color Pretty is a fictional novel that just was released July 24th of this year. So I'm excited to share with you about my story, basically, The Color Pretty. I'll give you a little bit of synopsis of the story before I start reading into it. So faced with life challenges of not feeling loved, being bullied, and never feeling good enough, Lola decided to take her life into her own hands. Despite her struggles, she chose happiness over self-doubt. She began reflecting as she embarked on her journey of healing. But she leaves past trauma. But will she leave past trauma behind? So The Color Pretty basically talks about colorism, feeling insecure, not having confidence at an early age, growing up into adulthood. And so I wrote a book about it. So let me tell you a little bit about The Color of Pretty. So they say the darker the berry, the sweeter the juice, right? Everyone has heard that phrase at some point in their life. When you're younger, you really don't understand what that means. And I can remember growing up from as early as 5, hearing, "Oh, Lola, you're such a cute girl," or you're so cute for a dark-skinned girl, or you actually have a really nice complexion. Taking these for compliments. Were they compliments? Did that sound like compliments to you? But I guess if you're 5, you really don't know, right? So, pretty for a dark-skinned girl. It was early Monday morning. Lola girl, if I have to call your name one more time, you're gonna meet your maker early. It's time for school. I heard my mom yell as she woke me out of dreamland. But mommy, I don't want to go to school today. My tummy hurts. Yes, it hurts. I don't feel well. I whined. I tried every attempt to maintain the soft cloud-like feeling under me that was my bed. Girl, if you don't get out that bed, I'm going to give you something to cry for, she said sternly. That was my cue to get out that bed. She said sternly. I immediately jumped out of my bed and began putting on my clothes. I went into the bathroom and brushed my teeth as I avoid looking in the mirror like I do every morning. My mom came in, began brushing my hair and putting in pink glittery bowls that I love so much. I asked mommy, as my voice began to grow frustrated, why is your skin so light and brown and my skin is so chocolate and burned? If you're my real mommy, aren't I supposed to come out looking like you with pretty skin? I questioned. My mother typically was super nurturing and could even come off as strict to some. However, looking back now, I realized she was just trying to instill strength within me because she knew some of the things I might face as I grew older. She told me, "Oh baby, your skin is so beautiful. You don't look like me fully because you have one half of me and one half of your father. And that's where your dark complexion comes from. You're only 6 years old, so you may not fully understand now, but I don't want you to ever feel less than because of the color of your skin. Many people will try to put you down and even make you feel like you don't matter. But I just want you to remember that you matter just as much as anyone else." So it was my first, excuse me. So is it my first daddy's complexion or my second daddy? That's what I asked her. I responded smartly, dismissing everything else she had said. "Lola Denise Brown, bring your ass," my mother yelled as she yanked me to the front door. She definitely did not appreciate my smart remark as she was trying to have a sentimental moment. Although I was only 6 years old, I was extremely smart and mature for my age. This was mostly my mother's fault because she told me everything. She didn't believe in keeping me in a child's place. I guess that's because I was her only child. So because of this, I knew the story of how her and my second daddy had me. I'm gonna read a little further into the book. Later that day, Mom talks about another young lady coming to live with them. I pleaded while explaining to her everything that Nessa told me earlier. She couldn't leave me. She was planning on a trip of moving out of state. And then she was one of my best friends. I couldn't let her leave me. So I kept asking my mom, could Nessa come to stay with us? Of course, the question was no. My mother ignored me as she continued to prepare for dinner. You never talk about him. What's wrong with him? And why doesn't he call me? Talking about my dad. Are you keeping him away from me? I continued to ask in concern. Before the last statement could fully escape my mouth, my mother slammed the pots on the floor and looked at me with scolding eyes. How dare you say that, Lola? How dare you? I have done nothing for the past 6 years but struggle to take care of you on my own without a single cent from your father, and you demean my efforts because I won't let your friend come stay with us. Go to your room now. Later in the chapter, the next morning, I woke up to loud talking on the phone. This time it was between two people and was extremely aggressive. I tiptoed downstairs, realizing that it was Nessa's mother that my mom was talking to. And come to find out, Nessa's mom and my mother had possibly slept with the same man, creating a whole nother entanglement in itself. In the back of at the end of each chapter, I have reflection questions. I want to read 2 of the reflection questions from this chapter. And basically I'm asking readers can you recall a time when you felt like you were bullied, or you felt less than, or wasn't good enough? How were you able to overcome the effects from your bullying experience as well? We'll go further into the chapter. Excuse me, my pages are sticking together. As she was talking to my dad, what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do, Bryant? What am I supposed to say to her? That is a father playing house, that you are a father playing house with another woman, but kids won't understand that. She paused in anger to fight back tears as she was talking to my dad. My dad had a fiance. He didn't think about all the decisions that he made prior to me coming into the world, but I was mature enough to understand and think that my dad did not want me growing up because he had a separate family. And I believe it was in those times that I began feeling insecure and not good enough because my dad didn't want me. He wanted to be with his other family. So that's just a little synopsis of The Color of Pretty. And thank you. The Color of Pretty, again, dealing with colorism, bullying, lack of confidence, lack of being secure within your own self and who you are, and how Lola made it, how she turned lemons into lemonade in the end. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Michelle, and congratulations. Make sure that you let us know how we can support this project.
Yes, I put all that information in the chat. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Up next, we have Ellen Birkett Morris.
Hi, I'm so honored to be here with you guys tonight, and I'm really loving the work that I'm hearing. And I'm going to share a couple of short poems and then a very short piece of flash fiction. The poems come out of my chapbook called Surrender, Finishing Line Press. So I'm going to read the title poem, Surrender. I walk down the hill, my white t-shirt, a flag of surrender. Surrendered to love, I leave my daughter at the curb. I turn to wave as if she were boarding the QE2, not the crosstown bus to school. Leaning close, she talks to a friend. Invisible, I turn to go. At the last minute, I catch a glimpse of her purple gloved hand, waving as she sends me off into the world. I'm also going to read a poem called Fatherless Girls. A lot of fatherless girls who say he wasn't around much or I stopped speaking to him years ago recount missed birthdays, graduations, births, or talk about the time he set fire to their trailer, leaving only a patch of scorched earth behind. In the face of absence or worse, your selfish love looks like a gift. Still, you left me, and I leave the porch light on for you. You out carousing with death on a ride from which you'll never return. I wait for you outside in the dark, watching heat lightning brighten the sky. Those small fires you set just to say hello. The short fiction that I'm going to read for you guys is from my short story collection, Lost Girls. And it's all stories about women and girls. It's set in a fictional town in Eastern Kentucky. And this story is called Heavy Metal. Laura's body felt heavy. Heavy was the word her son Jason used when he could no longer lift his head up or hold the controller to play video games. She sat by his bed reading to him like he was 8, not 16. He'd been dead 4 months now. She still had trouble getting out of bed. Sometimes she stayed there until noon. She lay there while stacks of patients' charts waited in her office to be coded. 204.00 was more polite than acute lymphoid leukemia without remission. In her darkest hours, Laura thought of getting 204.00 tattooed over her heart. She spent hours drawing the numbers across her chest with her fingertip. Laura drifted off and woke to the sound of drums pounding in the apartment below. It was 12:15. She pulled on her sweatpants and Jason's flannel shirt and went down to apartment 2D. She knocked on the door. The drumming didn't stop. She kicked the door hard. Then she reached down to rub her aching foot. "Effing door," she shouted. The door opened to a boy about Jason's age with stringy jet black hair and a nose ring. "What do you want, lady?" "I want you to stop that darn drumming. Some of us are trying to sleep." "You don't have like a job or something?" the kid said with a smirk. "Shouldn't you be in school or something?" she replied Laura. They glared at each other. A look of recognition crossed the kid's face. "Hey, aren't you that cancer kid's mom? Jason, right?" It had been so long since anybody had spoken Jason's name that she savored the sound of it in spite of the kid's bad attitude. "Yeah, I'm Laura." She held her hand out stiffly. "I'm Ike," he said, lightly slapping her palm in greeting. "Did you know Jason? He lent me a pen once to take a test." Laura smiled to herself. She could imagine him handing the pen over, his long, gorgeous fingers holding it out like a prize. Her mother had called those piano player fingers when Jason was a baby. His fingers were long even then and so fine that the light shone through them. "So, what did you want?" I gasped. "What were you playing? Symphony of Destruction, Megadeth, do you know it?" "No, actually I don't." "Want to hear me play it?" "Sure." She followed Ike into the apartment and down a hallway lined with pictures of him at every age. She hadn't taken down the pictures at home. She half expected them to come to life like something out of Harry Potter. Ike's bedroom walls were covered with posters of bands. A drum kit filled the corner of the room. Laura sat on the edge of an unmade bed. "These sticks are new. I'm still getting used to them," said Ike. Laura nodded. 1, 2, 3. Ike counted off and began drumming. The noise was fantastic. Laura could feel her heart beating. She nodded her head in time. Ike smiled. His hands flew as he beat the drums. His eyes closed, lost in the rhythm. The cymbals crashed. Ike raised his arms, sticks in hand, in triumph. Laura laughed for the first time in months. The music stopped, but she could feel it echoing in her ears, filling up the empty spaces. "You want to try it?" said Ike, holding out the sticks. Laura took the sticks and sat down behind the drum kit. The sticks were light in her hands. Ike gave her the thumbs up and counted 1, 2, 3. Laura raised her arms, waiting to feel the drum beats vibrate through her fingertips straight to her heart. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Ellen. That was beautiful. for our final speaker, we will have Dr.Malaika Horne. Can you unmute yourself?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you again. And I want to give a shout out to Lindsay Ellis, who referred me, and to LaPonda Kersey for inviting me, and also to Dana for facilitating. I wrote a book called Mother Wit, Exalting Motherhood while Honoring a Great Mother. And I think it's rather coincidental that because of the pandemic, the focus on motherhood is increasing. And Black motherhood is particularly compounded. So this is chapter 1, Perseverance. And this is a quote by H.W. Austin. Genius, the power which dazzles eyes, is off but perseverance in disguise. Flora Horne was her name. Flora was not without fault, but she had this air of benignity, kindness, and no nonsense. So in our eyes, she was the sainted mother, nurturing the hallowed co-relationship between parent and child. In her quiet, unassuming way, she commanded respect, obedience, awe, and fear. We call her nowadays a tiger mom, a raconteur, if there ever was one, like the griots of old, the great storytellers of the West African tradition. She reinforced her influence with fascinating and riveting stories. She would sometimes frighten us out of our wits and then end with a moral lesson, because she valued education above all else. Stories were most often meant to teach, pique our curiosity, and ignite our imaginations, leaving us with a burning desire to become educated. My older brother, William George, was born Wrigley George in 1942. My mother changed the name my father gave him when he was around 6 years old, because she did not want anything to hold him back. She felt a name could do this. She prepared him for schooling, similarly to Mary, her first child, born in 1940, named after our grandmother. Being her namesake did not change my grandmother's attitude toward my sister one bit. Everyone except my grandmother doted over her because she was such a pretty baby. Hattie, Flora's stepdaughter, and Jax, my father's daughter, nicknamed her Jelly Bean. And we called her that from babyhood to adulthood. Patty would say, she's as round and pretty as a jelly bean, and that's how she got her name. By the time William, nicknamed Kit, went to Johnson Elementary School in St. Louis, Missouri, where Mary also went, Flora was a well-known parent. She met with their teachers, reviewed their lessons, and attended all kinds of school programs. When the rest of us went to school, she did the same thing. So we were well known among the teachers, principal, and others. Said William, she brought me into the world when the future of a Black man in America was less than bleak. Separate but equal was the law of the land, and white supremacy ruled the landscape. As a result, I was born in a segregated, unequal hospital. I was reared in a segregated, unequal neighborhood. For many years, I attended a segregated, unequal schools and played on segregated, unequal recreation facilities, what few they were. Yet my mother was determined that I would have a better life than the one white Americans had programmed for me, end of quote. Warm memories have sustained us, particularly of mother regaling us with story after story, including tales of voodoo. Excuse me. I vaguely recall one that ended with the moral lesson: laziness will kill you. I more vaguely remember a superstitious voodoo story about burying items under a huge tree to bewitch or fix something or somebody. Perhaps my memory is so fuzzy because I didn't want to think about these bizarre tales, which usually had our hair standing on end, scared out of our wits. My sisters and brothers also remember voodoo stories, but also can't remember much about them. One summer day, I rejected one of my mother's superstitions. Don't open an umbrella in the house. And for God's sake, don't put it over your head. For if you do, something bad will happen. That's silly, I thought. And to show off to my sisters and brothers, I boldly flaunted her warning. Of course, we were in the basement and she was upstairs somewhere. So like the rebellious child I was, I defiantly opened up that big black umbrella and defiantly held it over my head as my siblings stood there in amazement. See, nothing happened, I said flippantly, and we all went back to our child's play. But that same day, I had a harrowing experience and barely escaped death. Since then, I've never opened an umbrella inside a house or building. And then in the back of the book, because I'm really writing this to parents, particularly mothers, all mothers, that may be some tips, and this is a set of addendums. The first one is related to chapter 1, titled A Sustaining Spirit. The difference between a successful person and others is not a lack of strength, not a lack of knowledge, rather it's a lack of will. The author is unknown. So I'm just going to read a few of these. Like the Indian lotus that rose out of the muck and mire, blossoming into a beautiful flower, virtually unscathed from the difficult roots and surroundings, children do not have to fall prey to their environment. They must develop resiliency, habits and skills, inculcating positive, productive ways to negotiate and navigate through virtually any situation, place, or group, no matter how difficult. Next, brace them for the hard realities of life, including racism, sexism, and classism. Children usually begin to sense differences in race, gender, and class around 7 or 8 years old. Keep your spirits up. Try not to feel beaten down. Surround yourself as much as possible with positivity. Expose them to educated and successful people, including on TV, in movies, also books and events, particularly about their ethnic group. Discuss what they learned. And then the final one I'm going to read is, when encountering difficult people, try hard not to retaliate. Also encourage children to avoid difficult people. Tolerance, nonviolence, and forbearance build strength of character. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Horne, for sharing that with us. Cardyn had made a note in the comments about, you know, all the writers touched on threads about parenting and about children, but from different angles. And it's just been, this reading has been such a beautiful synergy of all of that. So thank you all. And it's been an honor and a privilege and a pleasure to moderate, but let us all send LaPonda, who is lurking, good healing vibes to her and her family. And maybe next time she will grace us with her beautiful face and her beautiful energy. Thank you all so much. Again, if you haven't dropped your your IG, your website, your TikTok, your Twitter, whatever you do in the chat, definitely on the Facebook page, so we can all continue to support.
Thank you, everyone. This was so lovely.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody have a safe evening. This was great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Have a great
Bye.
rest of the week.
Yes.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Happy writing.
Bye-bye.
Yes, happy writing.
Happy writing.
Good night.